All right, we're recording. Welcome to the I-205 Tolling Diversion Subcommittee. It's part of C4, and I think it's also part of the RTAC bylaws as well. So Commissioner Savis is one of the co-chairs here for this group, and part of our housekeeping items early on in this short 1-hour meeting is to maybe talk about or discuss the opportunity to have a second co-chair. It was formerly Mayor Walters, who's no longer the mayor of West Linn. I would probably want to talk about having a new co-chair here. We could do it here at the front of the meeting, but I actually recommend doing it at the end of the meeting, just for the sake of getting the good details out here on the floor, because we've often run into a time crunch in this particular 1-hour window here. That's my recommendation, but you are the group. Commissioner Savis, how would you like to proceed?
That's fine with me. I also, I would love it if we had someone as a co-chair that was from either West Linn or Oregon City, because they are the most impacted. So whoever that may be, no, that's fine, but it's really up to us at all. And I'm happy to deal with that at the end of the meeting if we have more people show up. So I'm hoping Commissioner, you and I spoke this morning briefly, Mr. Mitchell, and you mentioned that Adam would be part of the normal C4. Do you anticipate Adam joining us today? Commissioner Morrill?
No, he's not able to join today. I'm the alternate from Oregon City to this body, but he's not able to join today, but he plans to in the future. Okay,
so that might be a consideration. And Councilor Baumgartner, is anyone else coming from West Linn today?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think it was on Rory's schedule, but I can see if he's available for the next meeting, for future meetings, and talk to him about that.
Okay. All right, great. All right, well, that's all I have. Is that your question, Trent? Just maybe discuss this towards the end of the meeting, see who joins us, and if we have time and all that good stuff.
Yes, and I would also like to encourage this group to talk about the time that they meet and how long they need to meet. Again, this has been shoved into a 1-hour window to meet everybody's lunch hour. Sometimes that's been challenging, and we have, we get to like those last 10 minutes and there's a lot of questions that, have to wait for a month. And so just want to pose for the group. Do we need to do a doodle poll? Do we need to find a different time? Is this the right amount of time? Or, help me help you, help us help ODOT. Let's work together and find out what's going to work moving forward. So we can hold up to like the last 10 minutes of this meeting.
Yeah, and just to plant the seed, and we'll touch that at the end of the meeting as well. I'm amenable to either extending the meeting time. The last meeting we had was a couple hours. I found that constructive. I'd like to make sure that if there's, an hour, that half that is presentation and at least the other half is conversation. So I'm going to make sure we get our questions in and our responses. So I know that some of us are adverse to having nothing but presentation and no opportunity to talk or express those issues. So if that's the case, and let's say there's a longer presentation and ODOT would like to make, that might really lay out a pattern of maybe looking at extending the meeting. I'm also amenable to a different time that works better for as many of us as possible. So I just want to plant that seed and we'll cover it towards the end.
Started. We have Mandy Putney here from ODOT and Tyler Patterson from WashDOT. So mixing it up today with special guest. And first on our agenda is an update, and I think this is a timeline update on the environmental analysis and when we can expect to see the first draft. And then Tyler, for you, if you have slides, you should have screen sharing ability and feel welcome to drive.
I think Adela, who's also here from the toll team, is going to help with the slides. So we have compiled everything all together for ease. And so that Tyler's able just to focus on his presentation. So yes, hi, I'm Mandy Putney with ODOT. I'm the Strategic Initiatives Director with ODOT's Urban Mobility Office. And part of my portfolio includes oversight of the toll projects as they're going through the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, process. And many of you have seen me a lot as we were commenting at the beginning of the meeting. Others of you haven't yet. but myself and the team are always available for C4 for this meeting and for your own individual boards and commissions and councils. So happy to come and do more specialized presentations to meet the specific interests that you might have. We do have Tyler Patterson with WSDOT here to do the bulk of the presentation. And in light of the opening remarks and comments by Commissioner Savas, I will say that if there are a lot of comments and questions on Tyler's presentation, which is first, I will yield my part of the presentation for a future meeting or to share by email and have other conversations. So I do really want to make sure that you're able to engage with a real life example of a diversion monitoring plan as it was put into place and is active. And then the next part of the presentation is set up to start talking about what you'd like to see from ODOT. But first, yes, I do have kind of an update on schedule. We are working really hard right now with FHWA to determine the publication date. My strong hope is it can be in February, which I know is right around the corner. So within the next 2 weeks, I should be able to have a date to share for that release. We're just wrapping up the final details with our federal partners. And then we will have that document out for review. Your staff and many of you have already seen many of the key findings and definitely the key transportation related findings that will be described and documented in the draft environmental assessment. So we've been trying hard not to leave that all for surprise or for, a compiled review. I'm anticipating that we'll have a 45-day public comment period, and we'll have a variety of options for people to engage with the draft environmental assessment. As a reminder, it is a draft, and there will be revisions that happen between the draft and the final or the revised environmental assessment later on, I'd say late summer at this point. Or early summer-ish, late summer, early summer. So that's kind of that update. And then the other schedule related thing I'll say is we do have a regional toll advisory committee meeting on the 23rd, and are expecting that group would begin talking about monitoring, diversion and monitoring kind of in the April timeframe, I think at this point, based on their current schedule. So this is good timing to hear from you and then to hear whether you think this will become an issue or a conversation at the full C4 group. And there's time to line that out prior to the next, the RTAC conversation this spring. So happy to answer overall schedule questions if there are any. If not, then I will turn it over to Tyler.
I'm not seeing any questions.
Before we get started, I wanted to, was introduced late yesterday to Alex Lopez, who is serving as Congresswoman Chavez Dreamer's staff. And he has joined us today. I just want to welcome him and let everyone know, thank you for bringing him in. I didn't know if he'd like to say a couple words, but thank you, Alex, for joining us today. And do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you, Commissioner. Just excited to be here. I'll be kind of monitoring and just, taking notes, listening in, so that, she can't do 1,000 things all at once. So just kind of be your eyes and ears. And I look forward to working with you guys, with all of you, and happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Mandy, you can carry on. I don't think I see any. Oh, I do see a hand raised from Councilor Baumgartner.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, I thought we had previously gone around and just said our name and introduced ourselves. I know that some people have renamed and put their title or city or position. I don't actually know everyone. And so I know some people also might be in that situation. And if people are listening to this meeting later, recorded, I thought that might be important, but I will leave that up to you, Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I was gonna do that right at first, and I didn't see some of our normal attendees, so I was hoping that more people would drop in. I was also looking for others, like including Alex today, so we can do that now. Let's just do that now. We're already almost 15 minutes in, and I don't see anyone else joining us right now. So I am Paul Savas. I'm a Clackamas County Commissioner. I am a co-chair of this group, and most of my assignment at the county is transportation oriented. Thank you for joining us today, and I'll pass it on to Commissioner across my screen here, Commissioner Mitchell, Oregon City.
Morning, I'm Mike Mitchell. I'm newest member of the Oregon City Commission. I'll be on the commission. I was appointed for the next 2 years to fill Mayor McGriff's spot when she was elected mayor. I'm the alternate to this committee. Commissioner Adam Marl will continue to be the primary representative from Oregon City. Not able to make it today, so I'm serving as alternate today.
Thank you. And Councilor Baumgartner.
Thank you. Mary Baumgartner, newly appointed council president of West Lynn. Thank you.
Councilor Pratt.
Valerie Pratt, and I'm also newly appointed council president for Tualatin, and I'm an alternate, and our new councilor Gonzalez is here as our representative.
Thank you, everybody. I just was elected to Councilman for Tualatin, so I'm happy to be here. Octavio Gonzalez.
Great. Councilor Sherman.
Thank you very much. Councilor Brett Sherman from the great city of Happy Valley. I also sit on the Metro Policy Advisory Committee and the C4 Committee and C4 Metro Subcommittee, and I think that's all of them. Good to see you all.
Metro Councilor Christine Lewis.
Good afternoon, Christine Lewis, Metro Council District 2. I've got a large part of Clackamas County, including Lake Oswego, West Lynn, Oregon City, Milwaukee, Happy Valley, and unincorporated Clackamas, Gladstone. All that's in my district, so really think this is a top transportation priority for D2.
Great, thank you. And the last member here I see is John McCabe from the Stafford area. John?
John McCabe, Stafford CPO.
Great. Thank you all for joining us. And other than staff, and I think you were introducing yourself as you roll out. So I will turn it back over to Mandy. And if she wants to introduce any other staff other than Trent to introduce himself, he's our faithful organizer, master of C4, organizing all these meetings. He's well appreciated and keeps us all on task and keeps everything rolling. So thank you, Trent.
Great. Thank you all for having us. Adela is here to help with the slideshow and to track follow-up items and questions. And I'll turn it over now to Tyler Patterson, who has graciously accepted our invitation to come and share lessons learned from WSDOT.
Great. All right, thank you so much. Let's see here. Get my screen organized. Oh boy, there we go.
It's a little hard to hear you, Tyler.
Oh, it is. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
There you got it. Okay, well, I'll just lean forward. Great. So my name is Tyler Patterson. I'm from the toll division at WSDOT. I'm the systems and engineering manager, which basically means I handle all the system components of it, of the tolling system, and not the customer service center. I do the back office and the roadway equipment. And I've also, over the years, I've gotten the opportunity to lead the monitoring effort when we've gone live. So I've gotten to lead the 167, the 520, the 405, and the 99 monitoring efforts. So I've got a lot of things to say about this. And I just say from the outset, this is really the WSDOT method doing this. And I hope that you guys can take and glean from this what you need, and so take what you want, leave what you want, and really just try to get as much out of this as you can. And feel free to follow up with me through Mandy or whomever, or directly. Yeah, happy to share this with you guys. So let's move. So what changes when tolling starts? This is WSDOT's approach to understanding the impacts. And I just want to emphasize a few things as we get started. Collaboration is really a big key for this. And it's not just one report, it's like a multiple report thing that we'll get into as we go through this. It's not just a very static thing, it's very dynamic and used throughout the process. All right. Great. So why is this process so important? I came up with 3 bullets for this. And so the biggest one is this establishes facts that everyone can agree are both relevant and accurate. This is incredibly important. Everyone agrees and that these facts are relevant and accurate. So that means basically if we say, this whole group of people agrees that 10% increase in this particular category occurred, then that is kind of where this job ends, performance monitoring, and then the political job takes over. So the idea is that everyone agrees what the impacts were, and then you can move forward with how you want to deal with that. Whether that's whatever the political solutions to some of those problems might be. Yeah, and it builds trust and connections between partnered agencies and the public. That is very important. And it also really concentrates on sees the transportation network as a network operated and maintained by multiple agencies and jurisdictions. And this process really works to reflect that. And I'll explain a little more of these as we go through. We want to hop to the next slide. Thank you. Just talked about why this is important. I also wanted to give you a little background on WSDOT, not too much. We'll just zip through a couple of our facilities. Then we'll kind of get into a high-level methodology and some detailed examples there. And then I'll hit the keys to success at the end. Trent, were you thinking that we'd ask questions as we went along the way, or just do it at the end?
My recommendation is that you move through the slides and then best for questions afterwards.
Perfect. So as you can see on the screen, we've got 5 current facilities. We had the Tacoma Narrows Bridge opened in 2007. That was really WSDOT's re-entry into the tolling world. Then 167, that was I want to say the 7th hot lane facility in the United States. That was opened in 2008. Then we did the 520 floating bridge, which opened in 2011. And that one is the longest floating bridge in the world. And it was also a pre-construction tolling, meaning we started tolling the old bridge before the new one was even started. That had a bunch of different unique factors to it. And then the 405 express toll lanes from Bellevue to Linwood. These were the first in the country that would enabled us to have image-based tolling on express toll lanes, which had never been done before. So that's really important. And then the 99 tunnel is the largest deep bore tunnel in the world, and that goes right under Seattle. And we've got a few more projects that are available or that are in the pipeline, and those should open in 25, 26, and 27 in that time frame. So let's move ahead. All right, so how does this process work? So the first job is to form the team. So get your posse of cowboys or whomever and get that team together. And we'll talk about that in more detail here in a sec. Then you establish the area to monitor and the time period. Listen and understand the concerns from partners. I cannot emphasize the listening part enough. Then we select the metrics and measure these concerns, and then determine with the data that we need to measure those, identify any gaps, then we fill the gaps, establish a baseline time period, begin collecting and sharing the data, start tolling, keep collecting data and sharing data, and then the ongoing operation. So let's hop into this. All right, forming the team. So WSDOT, this is the way WSDOT has done it, is that we've identified who needs to be on the team. And this is, I lovingly refer to this as a bunch of nerds. I'm one of them, so don't, but it's the engineers, the planners, public works directors, data and analysts. This is really, really important, I think, to get these people who are very technically savvy and can kind of talk the talk in this way. These are still the state DOT, city DOTs, cities, counties, transit, ports, state patrol, anyone that uses or manages part of the facility, as it's a network. And then these next two bullets, we kind of switch around. We've done it both ways. One, to have the kickoff meeting first and then meet with the jurisdictions, or meet with the jurisdictions and then have a kickoff meeting. But whatever you want to decide to do first. The key thing is to meet with these folks and really learn and listen what's important to them and what outcomes they're looking for and what things they need to measure. What's really fun is that you have these engineers and planners and public works experts that know the facilities and the road networks so well around these, in this case, 205 or wherever the toll project is. And that really has a lot of unique components that really help. So for example, like maybe there's a big high school right here, and that is a huge impact for just a couple hours on the road network. Very helpful to know as we design our program. So just a few examples here. I have 99 and 520. 99 was the deep bore tunnel. And that one, King County, Port of Seattle, Seattle DOT, Sound Transit, and WashDOT were involved. And 520 was a little different. We had 14 local jurisdictions. There was a lot of stress about that one. It was one of our first big projects. There are loads of local jurisdictions, the counties, WashDOT, there were some transit agencies, King County Metro, Sound Transit, and Community Transit, Federal Highway Administration, Washington State Patrol. These were some big meetings with all these folks. Next. So the establishing the study area and the time period. So this is always a little bit difficult because everybody wants to include everything and sort of a Goldilocks principle. You don't want it too small or too big, you want it just right. So I always kind of try to say the smallest we can have while still including everything. Because if you try to get it too big, you're gonna have a lot of confounding factors, and that's really frustrating. So these are just a couple of examples. 520 was a little tricky because the alternate routes were so far away, 522 and I-90. You had to have a much bigger study area than the smaller Seattle one on the left. Next. So once you have the study area, which by the way, may change as you go through this, as you learn and understand more, but at least you got to start. So a series of meetings to gather information from the local jurisdictions, state officials, federal officials, anyone that has an opinion on this may be eligible to be part of this group. Depending on how you want to set it up. And really taking your time here is really important. Really trying to understand their concerns, their questions. Oftentimes, we wind up dealing with or seeking input from people that are a little less familiar with transportation. Obviously, just members of the public as they weigh in and express their concerns. So just it's really listening and carefully asking a lot of questions and understanding where everybody's coming from. Next. So then we select the metrics that we want to measure. So it may include toll road usage, alternate routes, transit ridership, travel times, speeds, intersection, level of service type information, revenue, customer survey, comparison to the forecast. And I wrote down, communicate these to anyone that will listen and often. Making sure that everybody is aware of kind of what you're studying. And how that's coming together, that is making sure that, again, the metrics align with the overall goals. All that kind of good stuff is really critical to get in at this point. Next. All right, so identify the data gaps. Yeah, so this one is, well, these little orange dots indicate some sort of data collection device in that location. And what's interesting is, like, some cities will conduct tube counts, where you've got the vacuum tubes going across the road. Someone drives over them and it counts the number of vehicles. Typically, a lot of cities don't have the permanent loops or pucks, or however they're collecting it, but they've got these temporary tubes that go out there, and they usually do 1 to 4 collections per year. And so identifying the what data you've got out there is important. So really, this becomes a really great partnership between the jurisdictions and the state DOT. It's also an opportunity for adjacent cities to really share and restructure some of their tube count programs or their volume counting, which was interesting. I didn't expect that to happen, but like the city of Woodinville was very excited that Bothell was collecting information right next to their jurisdictional boundaries, and so they actually had an opportunity to share some data that they didn't realize that they would be able to. So what data is being collected, what reports are being produced, determine if it's possible to measure everything that's being asked, and continue to ask, what are we missing? What are people interested in that we're not capturing in this location? So then from identifying the gaps, we move to filling the gaps. So I updated this slide a little bit, sorry. So we had installed the equipment. These are tube pucks, loops, cameras, Bluetooth devices, interns, anyone you have could do manual accounts. But really just trying to fill the gaps, whether these are intersection movements or volume control or volume capturing devices or cameras to figure out where people are going. Bluetooth, there's a lot of options out here, and really every project has a budget, and so you got to right size it for how much budget you have. And what's fun about this is you pull out these great big maps at these meetings, and everybody kind of pours over them, and I'm concerned about this spot, and they're concerned about different locations, and this is really, I think, maybe the most fun of the process. Just figuring out how you're going to be able to fill these gaps. So in some cases, the city of Seattle paid for some pucks, the state paid for a bunch of different things. So this is also a cost sharing endeavor, potentially as well. But again, every project has a budget, and these you may have to make some difficult decisions to get this. But usually the monitoring equipment isn't too expensive. So anyway, that's where we are with that one, filling the gaps, and then we establish the baseline time period. So this is, you got to be flexible with this. This construction schedules move all over the place. Seasonal travel, there's external factors like a global pandemic, weather impacts as well, and transit service adjustment. Up in Seattle, the transit services are adjusted every, I think, 3 times a year. So you just got to be considerate of that. You've got forecasted data, making sure that your collected data also aligns with the way that it's forecasted. And then typically a year of data is really ideal, but it's not always possible. As you know, stuff goes into construction, and so that may reduce some throughput in some areas. But anyways, I won't get into that too much, but I guess the key point of this is to be flexible. And a year is ideal, but really October and May are my favorite months for comparing, because they don't have as many There's no winter, spring, or summer breaks involved. Weather isn't usually too bad, but usually a little bad. And then their commuting patterns are more typical with the school in session. All right. The next one. So then we begin by collecting data. To make these data available to the entire team. We've done this with an SFTP site, a secure FTP site, where everyone has access to the data as we collect it and put it on there. That really helps with the building the trust. What this really does at this point is then you're certainly all these engineers and planners and public works directors and things like that suddenly become quite knowledgeable about how this program's working. And it's really nice for the local officials to be able to go to them and ask someone they're familiar with and that they trust, hey, give me an update, what's going on? And they can pull the data right there. They can, pull up the maps and all that kind of stuff. And really it helps create a network of informed people that can really help educate some of the public officials. This is a big deal as we get into this a little bit more, making sure that everybody's saying the same thing, right? You don't want, see if Seattle says one thing, Bothell says another, Washington saying another thing, and that makes for a pretty awkward media inquiry and really makes everyone look pretty inept. So really having everybody on the same program is very helpful. So then you're collecting data, all this little big lead up to when tolling starts. And really you got to maintain some flexibility, you may need to add a location, that kind of stuff, right up until you start tolling, and even afterwards. So what we've done for this is we've done a lot of daily reports for the first week or two, and then we kind of switched to a weekly roll up, and then a monthly roll up, and then on to like the quarterly and annual reports. But this is a schedule that I pulled, just so you guys kind of get a flavor for that. On go live day, what happens. So then after you go live, the next morning, 7 a.m., we have our data pulled and gathered and prepped by all the data providers. This is then sent to some QA team that looks it over, makes sure, yep, everything looks good. By 10 a.m., this is something that's big at WashDOT, the no surprises meeting. We let our execs know what's going on before we share it with anybody else. I don't know if ODOT does that, but that's something to consider. And then within a half an hour, the performance monitoring team is in the loop. And they get to look at the data for the first time as well. This is before we release it to the public. They have an opportunity to then, these meetings don't take that long. Maybe 15, 20 minutes, and they have time to go back to their elected officials, let them know what's going on, get them all ready for a media briefing, statement for the newspaper, whatever they need. And really have a little time before that gets posted to the public at 1. Yeah, I feel like that actually works very well. This is done every day for the first few days. And really we've done it different ways. But I think the way that works the best is kind of to play it by ear. And as people stop reading these and attending these meetings, you can kind of decrease the frequency. Maybe you go to every other day, kind of depending on the sensitivity of it. But those are some options. And then you got to keep tolling after that. So this is the 520 bridge chart that I just added to this slide. Obviously starting in 2011 to 2021, you can see right as we started the tolling, or the volumes dropped, slowly increased, and then you can see the pandemic again. And so we meet, and we still don't meet about 520, but we met as frequently as we needed to. And really, we aim to answer all the questions and the concerns that people raised. There may be new things that people didn't realize they wanted to monitor. So we always try to add those if possible. And really try to answer all the questions that we possibly can. We may not be able to answer one specifically, but maybe we've got some data nearby that can help contribute to that answer. And one more step, number 11. This is the operational report. So again, this is the daily reports, the weekly wrap-ups, monthly and quarterly reports, and then a one-year report or an ongoing report. We've published here's the current state of things before we went live. And then compare it. It's usually a year before and a year after, but it's not always that way, depending on the timing. Yeah, and then you've got these great reports that help preserve some of the history of this occurred. And what is nice, again, is that all the jurisdictions are using the same information. Either pulling it out of these operational reports or using some calling up whoever's leading it on the ODOT or WashDOT side and ask the questions, make sure that everyone has a consistent response. And again, this is the real point of this is that we may disagree on the policies that kind of come out of these, but the hope is that everyone agrees on the data. And this data really helped inform us and enables us to make smart decisions. So important. Next. So just to reiterate a few of the keys to success here, and I know I've gone quickly. The final report should be unbiased and accurate. Just any little commentary, stuff like that. You can really try to discourage that from ending up in the report. And should be reviewed by the team, and the team really needs to approve it. Maybe in WashDOT's case, we do a lot of the writing ourselves. And then the jurisdictions, we don't necessarily have as much time to do that. Then you can weigh in with comments. And that comment resolution might take a month or so, maybe longer, but I think it's really important to get the whole team to agree. Maybe you have to pull a few things out or add a few things, but whatever. The key is that the data is agreed upon. Collaboration with the local jurisdictions, because they're the local experts. They know way more about their particular jurisdiction than anybody else. So it's very helpful to have them on the team. They have historical data counts and other data which can be helpful. You get in a pickle or additional questions come your way. And they can keep the elected officials informed and answer all the questions. That is really helpful, establishing trust between, not just between the state DOT and the local jurisdictions, but among the local jurisdictions as well. It's very nice to be able to have someone to call if you have questions about what's going on with the transit data here. Why is this saying this? And you've got a trusted colleague who you've met with, 10 times maybe over the course of the 2 years. And a commitment to transparency throughout the process. We try to make this data available as quick as possible so that everybody is able to understand it and use it. So that was one more slide, I think. Yeah, just my finish line slide. That's a very high level overview of what we have done, and I hope it's helpful. Councilor Sherman, do you have any question?
I do, thank you. Actually, appreciate the information, Tyler. So I think Seattle is a cool study because you've got the 520 bridge, which is a great example of you have two other options to get to the city. You go across 90 or you head up over the Horn. And so in my mind, that's one where you could really easily measure the difference between the change in capacity on 520 versus the others, accounting for some natural growth. And then your assumption would be the rest are either not going or taking mass transit. So I mean, and I'll be curious, I'd like to know kind of what your observations were or have been about that, whether you did see an increase on the other routes to get in. And then the second is you got the exact opposite scenario, which is the 99 tunnel, which you can literally get right off before the tunnel, go through town, jump right back on again. And so that's an example of there are a lot of different options that people can take. So I'd be curious, again, what were the observations on the traffic through there? And because you were doing something new anyway from the old viaduct or whatever that was,
Right.
so that's something new. But what's happened to, you know, the surface street traffic in that immediate area as well? And so, and I guess, you know, being a numbers guy, it's good to have the data out there, but what you do with that data, how you interpret it, can be subjective. You know, there's a lot of art to it as well as science. So you know, yes, you can put out stuff transparently, but you have to draw some conclusions from it. So sorry to just kind of spew that at you, but observations on both of those locations?
Yeah, sure. So 520, I'm trying to remember that was 10 years ago, but let me just remind myself. It was, I believe, about a 5% decrease, maybe 5% decrease across the screen line, which was reused as Lake Washington. So we saw a decrease in the number of trips of people coming over, which does not mean that there were, you know, it's very difficult to measure that because some people could be in a carpool, which we tried very hard to get that information, but it's so hard to collect that data. And then we saw that you can count them in transit vehicles. So that worked out well. And I believe it was about a 10% increase on I-90 and a little less than that on 522. I'm trying to remember here. So I'm sorry. It's been a while, but the I-90 seemed to switch from more of a morning peak and an afternoon peak to a tabletop, where it just sort of reached its highest capacity for all day long, which was sort of the pattern that 520 was in previously. And then so 520 switched to this double humped, you know, morning peak, afternoon peak with a less in the middle. That is a we call a layer cake with the toll rate. So it's higher in the peak periods, lower in the off-peak periods. And so you can kind of adjust the toll rates there as well. We did not do that, but we could. So you asked about 520. That was, and we saw somewhere around a 5% decrease going across the screen line. So I don't know what happened to those people. Whether they did trip chaining or maybe they, you know, they had maybe multiple stops over on Seattle, maybe their trip's a little more efficient, or perhaps they didn't take their trips or found a different destination.
Okay.
Let's see, you asked about SR99, which was tricky because, yeah, there's so many ways to get through that. So we basically had like a northbound screen line south of the tunnel and the southbound screen line north of the tunnel. And we monitored almost every street we could find. Some of the smaller ones and alleys we didn't do. And those ones we actually saw, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it went down on 99. There were more people on the city streets, especially in the beginning. So this one was actually very interesting. In February, we switched the alignment, meaning we did not have an intermediate access point. Because it used to be the viaduct, which had an intermediate access point halfway through the city. And the tunnel only has an in and an out. And so we had some time where we had just so what we had set it up to do was that in October was the month we were trying to compare, because that was the cleanest month. And so we tried to have a pre-viaduct, or just the straight viaduct with no tolling, and then a free tunnel, and then a paid tunnel. That's how we try to set it all up. So there were like 3 different time periods to compare. So we could sort of control for how much the realignment impacted things. But that did not work out because of the pandemic. So
yeah, that makes sense. That's yeah. So it'd be hard to make a true comparison. I appreciate the answers. Thank you very much.
It was very, very interesting, very difficult. And then in the West Seattle Bridge had problems later. So
yeah,
well, I hope that helped.
Tyler, we appreciate you attending here today and sharing your experience.
Sure.
I think it's important to say this, and that is that ran my business for 25 years in the Metro Portland area, Clackamas County, and I traveled up to Seattle at least 3 times a month during the business days. So I spent a lot of time up there, not so much anymore, but I still frequent friends and businesses up there from time to time. That said, what I was always in awe of and appreciative of is that, WashDOT spent money, they built capacity. You've got nice, well-designed highways, adequately sized. I mean, it's impressive. Every time I've driven through there in the last 20 years, there's always a construction, a capital project going on. And, you're adding transit, light rail. I've seen it. It's impressive. But I think what we got here in this region is quite unique. We have a grossly undersized interstate and highway system. It's inadequate today to meet its population demands. We have not invested anywhere near like Seattle area or the whole state of Washington is invested in their system. You've got multiple alternatives in that area. There are so many different roads and paths to get from wherever you want to go up there. And again, you're mentioning towns and areas that I've traveled, and also dealing with a tremendous amount of growth. The growth that I've seen out there. I remember back when Graham was a teeny little town, and it was a practically a dirt road almost to get to Graham. And now it's on the map, right?
Yeah.
So all that said, the other unique thing that we're doing here in Oregon is we're tolling all the interstates and all the lanes, and we're going to toll them 24/7. That's the plan, and we're going to increase the number of roads that are on the books today to be tolled in the next couple of years. So that's unique to that area, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I came from a state where we tolled. We had one of the first tolling roads in the nation. Which was an express lane, which I'm an advocate of. I think that worked out really well. People are getting value for the dollar in their time. All that said, in your presentation and all today, there's not much, and maybe Councilor Sherman slightly touched on it a little bit, but the issue of diversion is a huge one today, not because of tolling, but because of our undersized facilities and our bottlenecks that are diverting people off. So we already have a taste of the diversion in our local roads. So is there, of all those roads you listed, authorized or tolled, and you had 2 different categories there, can you tell me one that is more like or similar to what's being proposed here?
Well, so the Abernathy Bridge, if I remember correctly, is that pre-completion tolling? Is that right, Mandy? Yeah, so that might be like the old 520 bridge. You don't have the alternate routes. At least I'm not super familiar with Portland. I mean, I know it somewhat, but I hesitate to say this is a very comparable roadway, but you're making really good points. I don't know if I can answer that question very well.
All right. Yeah.
Because of my unfamiliarity with some of the roads, but I mean, if you're dealing with the diversion, and that's typically what people are concerned about, and the cities were very concerned about that, especially on the 520 project. And I think, we met so many times with those groups. And I remember the city engineers were so stressed and so concerned as they were getting pressure from their local officials. And then when things finally went live, it was kind of a little bit anticlimactic. Like, oh, that's not so bad. We heard that from a lot of people, and people that had sworn up and down they're going to really put a lot of pressure on us. That sort of evaporated to some degree, and then some cities came back and said, "Hey, this light isn't working correctly anymore because of the diversion. All right, let's improve the level of service." And so we did have we did make quite a bit of improvements before or as part of the project, whether that's travel time signs, helping people figure out, oh, this way is faster now. All right, that's really helpful. So we tried to look ahead with some of those as best we could, and then we were reactionary in some of them, which was like adjusting signal timing and stuff like that.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you for acknowledging that, it is unique up here and the points made, it's really an issue for us is there's not much in the way of alternate routes, and those alternate routes are surface roads. And
Right.
those surface roads are going to be bearing the brunt of that, which is in jurisdictions, and it's not very well designed. So I've taken up a lot of time. Councillor Baumgartner, I think you had your hand up next, and it was Christine Lewis after that.
Can I just add one thing to that?
Oh, sure.
You mentioned that having alternate routes. I mean, so there's like this equilibrium point where every trip. So there were typically when we opened a roadway, everyone diverts like the first day, or not everyone, but a lot of people divert. And then the next day, no one diverts. And there's like this seesaw kind of settling out period as kind of people try to figure out which way is faster for their particular route or their destinations and their starting points and all that. So it takes a while for it to kind of settle down. It's not like people figure it out very quickly, and then they adjust, and then sort of so it reaches a new equilibrium. And I just want to point out that takes a while. So you can't just say, oh, that's the first week, oh, it's no diversion, or maybe it's a huge diversion. We don't know, but it takes a while for that to kind of play out. That's all I wanted to add. Sorry.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we're almost kind of run out of time. So Councillor Lewis.
Sure. Thank you so much. And Tyler, good to see you. I
Yeah.
really appreciate your presentation. Some of that I wish we could have all, along with ODOT, seen 2 years ago before we started this journey, or as we started this journey. The 520, I think, is absolutely the most similar based on my understanding of your roads. But the thing that, I mean, is tolling all lanes, and it's a bridge. But the thing that it does differently that Abernathy does not is you have that bus right there on both bridgeheads, an efficient and connected bus service. We do not have that. I want to ask you a question regarding what you called the cost share, for getting some of that monitoring in place, for getting some of that infrastructure that you need for the ongoing assessment and data. You said that you did cost share or cost split, but you did that with City of Seattle. Did you do that with your smaller cities? Because I look at what you call a smaller city, Bothell, and it's in our project area, that would be the largest city. And I don't know how translatable that is. If you're saying it's a best practice or a standard practice to cost split, we don't have that kind of magnitude over here.
Okay, that makes sense. Often some of our smaller cities would sort of like an in-kind. We do, 20 tube collections a year. And then maybe they say, okay, for this year, we're going to adjust them because we're concerned about these couple of roadways or whatever, with diversion and so they may not be adding additional budget to there, but just redistributing what they already do. In a way, like, oh, Woodinville already collects data right here. We don't need that collected again. It's only a mile away. We'll scoot ours over here and collect it at maybe advantageous times, based on whatever schedule you're trying to, we want one a month out, and we want one 3 months out, and then maybe 6 months out or something like that. And so they may not have added additional money, but they sure added a whole lot of information that was helpful in understanding what was going on.
Great, that's helpful perspective. I might have follow-up because I'm not even sure we would have the ability to do that, but thank you for explaining.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Oh, I should also mention the City of Seattle. They installed some equipment that we bought. They're like, okay, we'll buy it, you install it. So that's another way to work it out.
Councillor Gonzalez.
Thank you very much for the high-level review. As we move forward, I'm hoping that if we're doing the traffic studies for the 205, where it converges onto Highway 5, here in Tualatin, we do have that street that intersects right with a hospital where we have emergency services. We've seen what accidents or delays on 205 that run parallel to our city and transfers over to Highway 5. Literally, we're on the V point of 205. People will cross through Tualatin to go to Highway 5. I would be very interested, before we continue to move forward, because I know we're moving forward, is I would like to see some of the traffic studies that you guys are going to be doing for that area and what you project that those things to be. I'd like to have that information Because if it's 2-year implementation, it gives us time here to be able to work with our constituents here in the community. But know this, that 205 runs parallel to a street called Borland that intersects right into, people have to cross through our city, where I live, to get to Highway 5. I'm sure you guys have considered that, but we like to see where your thoughts process was around that to mitigate some of the offloading of the traffic that would come from 205 onto this road. I know what you said that in the beginning it's a buildup and it takes some time, but like Commissioner Savas said, we're undersized. Our transportation system is undersized. We have 2 lanes when we need almost 3 lanes, and then to have this happen, it's going to definitely provide some concern. But as we're moving forward, those studies we'd like to see ahead of time and see what you guys' projections were on those. Okay.
We're happy to follow up with you, Counselor.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Okay, folks, we're running a little bit late, so those of you that can hang on and go a little bit over the hour, thank you. Those who can't, we understand. Last question or last hand up I see is Mr. McCabe.
Yes, my question is, I was looking at slide 4, and you have the average rate during peak being $1.53. And luckily we had this information in advance because I studied it on 520 and the average rate is over $3. And that brings into the problem of Google Maps is if you go, I don't want toll roads, we don't have alternatives down here. How is it handled in Washington? And then in addition to that, on 205, are you working with ODOT to inform people if they're going to take 205 at about the Clark County Fairgrounds, that they're going to have to pay a toll if they want to get back over to Tualatin, or they're just going to be surprised and go into our neighborhoods to get around the toll?
So those are pretty Portland specific. I'm not working on this project. I'm just letting you know what WashDOT has done. Those are good questions. And I mean, there's a huge effort by the communications team. I'm sure Mandy's been working on that a lot, because it's one thing to I mean, personally, I work on like the technical details, and those are that's the easy stuff. I think the stuff that really is sort of beyond my my expertise is the communications. And you're right, there's a lot of communications that need to be done to make sure that everyone feels informed and knows what's going on. Mandy, you could probably speak a lot better to that. To your.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say there will be a full signage plan and communications plan as we get closer. So that is coming in the future.
All right. One thing I noticed in one of your slides, Tyler, was the tubes and pucks, basically the counters, the counting the traffic. And I couldn't help but think when you were talking about that, if that was something, and this is more of a question for Mandy, if that's something that well, let me ask you this question first, just a yes or no. Was that permanent or temporary?
Some of them are temporary, some of them are permanent.
Okay. So with that said, my question is this, Mandy, are we planning, or is ODOT planning on doing something similar on the roads in which we know we're going to have problems with, like Willamette Falls Drive, Main Street, the city of Main Street, Highway 43? I mean, and frankly, I'd like to see those counts and those numbers, 7 days a week, every day, because of course I'm concerned about peak hour, but I'm also concerned about off-peak hour because people trying to avoid the toll. And so I just don't know if there's going to be an aggressive rollout of counting or counters like WashDOT's done.
Commissioner Savas, that's a great lead into what will likely be our next conversation and presentation. So we want help developing Oregon's monitoring program, and think that this group is probably not the full team, in terms of like the team that Tyler mentioned needs to be pulled together. I see, some people missing here, like, the police or others voices that we'd want at the table. But I do think that the perspectives of this subcommittee will be essential as we're moving forward and figuring out what we want to monitor, what data is already available, what the gaps are, and then how we fill it. So I think all those ideas are on the table right now, and we'll need your help to figure out what the actual plan is.
Okay, so it's not something that you've already baked in the monitoring or baked in monetarily in the project.
We have committed to do monitoring and to have a monitoring program, and we'll have a budget for that. That'll be part of the toll program expectations in terms of transparency and accountability and reporting, but the details are what we need to do now as we move forward. So this presentation, we had originally planned to do a couple months ago, and that meeting got canceled. This is the start of providing you kind of an example and to get you all thinking about what's relevant here and what are the specifics that you'd like monitored, where, and how is it happening already? Would it be new?
Okay. Well, thank you, Mandy, and thank you, Tyler, for flying all the way down here and sharing your experience. I know we have a little bit of housekeeping left over. I don't know if everyone has thought about, do we want to either, number one, elect a co-chair today, or and the other issue was, do we want to extend the duration 1 hour to an hour and a half or 2 hours, and also the time and day in which we do this. So first things first, are we inclined to nominate a co-chair today? If you do, just put your physical hand up if you want to do that today, or you want to defer that to the next meeting.
And maybe since there's a preference by this group to have a Westland or Oregon City Commission counselor respectively be in that spot, it'd be a good chance to outreach to them in the meantime.
Would you also please use Tualatin in that same vein, because we are also going to be greatly impacted. So it isn't just Westland and Oregon. Okay, we need to be part of that same list of the greater impact. So I would consider this chairmanship, but I just need to know a little bit more.
Okay. And Gladstone is similar, in a similar situation.
Yeah. The other cities we don't have here today that attend is Milwaukee, Gladstone. We appreciate you being here, Councilor Gonzalez. Lake Oswego is not here today. Also be nice to have someone, Canby sometimes is here. So I want to make sure that we have a full enough audience to do that judiciously, so that when we select, everyone's involved as much as possible. How about time of day? Do you all feel that a doodle poll would be a good way to gauge our availability? Okay, I see heads up. Okay, so Trent, let's plan on doing a doodle poll for that. And is it possible, Trent, to also survey folks on the 1 hour, hour and a half, 2 hour? Yeah, I think it might be easy to start with the survey maybe in week 1 and then go to doodle poll, because I can ask, do you want a longer meeting? Do you want to, that's its own question, right? And then, do you generally want to meet in the mornings or the afternoons, or I can't meet in the daytime? Like, surveys cover that a better way than doodles does. So I'll start with the survey like in the next 7 days, and then try to turn that around quick. We got a month right before this group meets again. We'll figure it out, but survey first probably. Okay, great. Again, I want to, thank you, Mandy, for the presentation. Tyler, again, thank you for being here today, and all my colleagues on this screen. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.